really, really smart who just don't, they're not psychologically compatible with the whole 9 to 5 working routine. But they've got their little routine of their daily life down pat. Like in Berkeley, there was a free box where you could get a free set of donated clothes every day. The pool opened up to street people so you could take a shower. And the Berkeley Catholic worker had a trailer in the city park that served a meal at 4 o'clock. So I got quite familiar with that population and found out that once a year they meet at a state forest every year. It's called the Rainbow Family Gatherings, and I did several of those every year. In fact, I may go up to Minnesota this July, and it's been about 30 years since I've been to one, but I think it'd be kind of fun, where there's everybody that travels on the road, with no money or anything, they get together, and some of the people who would be considered bums on the street are some of the most highly respected, intelligent, well-organized people. They might put the kitchen together. They might do this or that for various groups of people, and they go from having no status to having high status in this little bubble of the subculture. So I met the Hare Krishna people. I almost joined the Hare Krishnas back in 1975. Over the years, I heard there was a Krishna city called New Vrindavan in West Virginia, and that's on my bucket list to go visit if it's still around. There's about 600 Krishna families living there who work all day. They play their music and they dance and they try to achieve Krishna consciousness. And looking back on it at the time, I thought they were kind of nowhere in life. It's like you really need to quit this and make something of yourself. But looking back on it, there were some very highly developed, spiritually oriented people who knew that it was all an illusion anyway, so they just kind of renounced it all like a monk, and they live a happy life of music and dancing every day. So, and raising their family. They do marry and have children. So, but they live family, and so it's a really interesting lifestyle that possibly missed out on, but I still feel a spiritual connection with the Krishna people. In California, there was various Krishna temples where you could go, and in the Christian missionaries, you had to listen to a sermon to get a bologna sandwich, and in the Christian temples,
bribe you with a bologna sandwich. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
What we do for spirit.
Yeah, in the Christian temple, you got to dance for about an hour to the harmonium and the tabla music, so I would dance with them for about an hour, and they served something called prasadam, which is a sugary rice dish. So I much preferred the Krishna temples over the missionaries. But yeah, I eventually got my act together, and I had a career in sales, and then I got into occupational therapy, and I was really glad to have the transition from selling things to people to just focusing on helping them. Our clients have lost their independence with dressing, grooming, bathing, toileting, or feeding in some fashion or another. Maybe they broke their hip or had a stroke, and our job is to get them back independent and send them home if we can. But if not, let them arrive at their maximum level of function so that they can stay comfortably in the facility and take care of themselves as much as possible. But I've really enjoyed 22 years of that profession, and I feel really privileged and honored to have met the people that I have as clients in the last couple of decades. So I made a good selection for my particular psychology. But ever since I had the near-death experience in 2009, I've been just obsessed with this idea of what the heck happened to me. Who were these people that showed up, and how could that happen? And I started out reading a lot about other people's near-death experience, like Eben Alexander, the Proof of Heaven guy, the neurosurgeon that was brain dead for a while. There's absolutely no brain activity, and he had this wonderful experience and met some people in his experience that was confirmed when they brought him back to life as being a real experience. And then I ran into Dr. Kenneth Ring in the Omega Project, and he connected near-death experiences to alien abduction. And that kind of puzzled me.
Really? I haven't heard that. I know you're very well read, and you've done extensive research.
Yeah, I mean, I had to buy bookcase after bookcase at Walmart. The cashiers got to know me, and so you're buying some more books, right? So I get them on eBay, for used, and I just blew through all of them. Jacques Vallée, Timothy Good. I really am a fan of John Keel's work. I've collected all the there's a guy I'm actually Facebook friends with, Andrew Colvin. He put together a bunch of wonderful audiobook collections of John Keel's work from the 60s in various magazines that he worked for. But he's got The Outer Limits of the Twilight Zone, Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, The Perspicacious Percipient, The Mothman Prophecies, and a really wonderful book called The Eighth Tower. The Eighth Tower was hailed as sort of a cult classic in England, but over here he got stones thrown at him because here everybody was kind of fixated on the extraterrestrial hypothesis. He was the one that coined the term ultra-terrestrial and thought that a lot of the flying saucer manifestations were transmogrified energy from various realms of the superspectrum and entities that exist in the electromagnetic frequency band that can somehow transmogrify energy into a temporary physical object here that just vanishes, and that the witnesses are highly selective. They're actually selected for these experiences. But what I noticed in the early UFO writers, from Jacques Vallée to John Keel, was they all concluded, after it was all said and done, that, like Jacques Vallée said, that the UFOs were a control mechanism for humanity. And then Keel, actually in the Eighth Tower, postulated that there might even be an alien machine somewhere on Earth that was producing what we call paranormal experiences left over from an ancient advanced civilization trying to recreate their super science. And and even Jim Mars made a mention of that right before he died, that he thought maybe the antediluvian civilization that existed prior to the Younger Dryas impact event of 12,920 years ago that created a globally connected megalithic society, that maybe they had a piece of technology here on Earth that was guiding humanity towards greater technology so that they could recreate their former glory and the technology that they had. Keel even speculates that maybe the Kaaba that the Islamic people have over in Mecca, the little meteorite that they venerate on their Hajj journeys, might have some alien artificial intelligence to it. Who knows? Scientists kind of write the Kaaba off as just a meteorite that fell to the ground. But if you dig into it, there's a lot of literature about the stone having certain powers and stuff. So it's all really interesting. You get into the ghosts. I spent the night in a haunted house and saw guys with EVP equipment, electronic voice phenomena, and the whole group, subculture of people in the United States that are out actively hunting ghosts. And my take on ghosts is they happen, but I don't know if you can go out looking for them. You know, it's like there's kind of an overlap of frequencies. Like sometimes when you change the channel on a television, you can kind of see a ghostly image or something. Well, the ghosts that people are reporting, I think, are sort of a frequency overlap like that happen sort of like a lightning strike. But whether you can go out actually looking for ghosts or to communicate with ghosts, I'm still uncertain about that. But I keep an open mind on it. So one of the
I'd like to mention our. Oh, go ahead. Finish that statement. I was just going to say go ahead.
Of the many types of ghosts that are in the literature, the etheric revenant is probably the most pertinent to the UFO phenomena, because the etheric revenant is thought to use biological material from the three-dimensional realm to create manifestations. Blood, soft tissue, things like that, in order to transmogrify that into basically an apport of some sort. But yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, the EBENS, I was going to ask if you're familiar with the 28 million year cycle, or back when I worked with my husband during the Reagan years, I was wondering if you studied any of Linda Moulton Howe as a master's in communications, but she got on a JAG and very in-depth studying the cattle mutilations and ET involvement, or possibly whatever. But did you follow the track? Because she got a letter handed to her by Rick Doty, who is a person of interest in my life at this point, or a friend on Facebook, if you want to be nice about it, that we're all friends and we're all trying to figure out our own stories. But that's one of the tracks. I was wondering if you, in your book, now people, like I mentioned on our description, well, you're all writers of books in our Authors Club, and Ken wrote Ken's Moon, and Russell Scott Brinegar wrote Overlords of the Singularity. Very thick book, very extensive research. He's an excellent research, Overlords of the Singularity. But mine is Alien UFO Contact, and before my husband died, we wrote Roswell UFO Encounters. So Janet got hold of my book, and that's how I've wound up with Ken and Russ. So I have to give kudos where kudos are due because, like he said, Janet found him on Clifford Stone, a friend of ours in Facebook. We're all friends in social media. But what I'm asking is, Russ, if you have tracked the story from Reagan forward on the March 2001, my husband was at Camp David with President Reagan, and we follow up on the Robert O. Dean paperwork that with the Allied Command. Do you follow in your research? Did you follow Robert or Bob together? Dean?
Yeah, there's a group of material called the Blue Planet Project where they have a lot of interesting material about William Casey and basically briefing President Reagan about Roswell and about various ET populations, and that was right before he kind of went nutty and went total tilt into the Star Wars program. I guess his briefing spooked him, and of course, Grant Cameron and PresidentialUFO.com, he's spent about 40 years trying to figure out which presidents knew how much, if any, and he has recently changed paradigms from the extraterrestrial hypothesis to more of an interdimensional thing. He's gone from nuts and bolts to consciousness. So it's kudos to him for being open-minded enough to do that, because I think with the free organization and the studies that are being done, consciousness itself does have a big interplay into the UFO phenomena itself. Carl Jung used to think that the flying saucers were a manifestation from the collective human subconscious, and he may have been correct, but there may be an alien component to that has a connection with the collective human unconscious and are able to select certain people and provide certain circumstances with an overall goal in mind, either for that person or for humanity in general. And as far as Linda Moulton Howe goes, I've studied her book at Alien Harvest pretty extensively. I love the photographs that she has. I think it's on page 32. Of some of the infrared photographs during cattle mutilation incidences where they're just these interdimensional-looking blobs. One of them looks like an amorphous brain with like a proboscis, sticking down. And she has gotten so far as to realize that creatures from outer space are doing this. The cows are being lifted up into the air somehow, probably by some sort of a tractor beam. But it's still sort of a mystery how they're completely bloodless. And I've got my own little speculation based on everything I've read, is I think that the beam that's used by these creatures is a osmotic, pressurized osmotic beam. So that they found a lot of the cows, they have pink insides where they've been irradiated. And I think when they're irradiated and the tissue goes soft, the blood is extracted through the skin, through osmosis, up into a bladder or into a plasma body, into the creature above that's got sort of like tentacles coming down. And I know this sounds kind of insane, but Trevor James Constable actually caught some of these, what he called sky critters, on infrared film back in the 70s, and he's written a couple of books. One's called Cosmic Pulse, and the other one is Sky Critters. And he thought himself that the creatures that he was photographing in the atmosphere were the ones conducting the cattle mutilations. So we don't know. There's also another incident in Brazil that Dr. Jacques Vallée went and investigated called the Chupa Chupa wave. And there's several really good photographs online of the Chupa Chupa wave, and it looks like they have a plasma body with sort of like a tentacles coming down. But in the Chupa Chupa wave, what's interesting was that these creatures or craft or whatever they are that look like they're made out of some sort of plasma, they're bright as a welder's torch, and they can give you something called Klieg's conjunctivitis if you stare at them too long. But they turn into a flying saucer type appearance, and then they chase people and puncture them and draw blood for them. And that's why they call it Chupa Chupa. Chupa means to suck. and chupa chupa means that they're having blood drawn for them. So Dr. Jacques Vallée went there in 1979 and was just astounded by this chupa chupa wave that they were, in that